Thank you for giving me the floor. and I will speak about the governmental policy making in forestry and the forest sector, and which is complex, and it requires decent and relevant analysis and models in order to do right policy making. And the policy making, the governmental policy making, is forming a lot what's going to happen in the forest and in the forest sector. So I will talk about some models and how to use them. And before that, I would like to convey my warm congratulations to the laureates. I have had the privilege to interact with them over the years here, many years, each of them, but especially Darius Adams. An anecdotal information is that I invited Darius Adams and Richard Haynes to come to the university 1980 to present the TAM model. And the purpose was that we were organizing a seminar at the Academy of Agriculture and Forestry to try to give some injections to the actors in the forest sector in Sweden. And I must say that mildly expressed, the reception was lukewarm. So it's a pleasure to see that 43 years later, you are getting a royal reception. Congratulations. So the forest sector modeling should support the governmental policy making. And the important part is to deal with the dynamics between the policies, the forest resources and how we are managing it, the industrial production, the markets, economics, and sustainability. So far, in most countries in the world, we are lacking this holistic picture. Instead, different actors in the process, they have their specific view on the system boundaries, on the space, the time. So it means that they are talking different languages. And the models have one purpose in that respect, and that is to give a common framework for the actors in the policy process. And that is, of course, leading to the question, what is a holistic model? Yeah, this is one simple cut of it. And we have to consider, as Gert-Jan has illustrated, the international laws and regulations. And they will not be less in the future, they will be more. We have to consider the changing world outside the forest sector. We have a rather ugly world currently, and it doesn't look it will be much better in my lifetime. We have to consider the industrial production, the industrial development. So the international laws are, as Gert-Jan illustrated, a lot influencing the ecosystem services, but it's also impacting on the industry. The forest sector is generating a lot of benefits for the communities and societies, and we have to take those into account. And these together are framing what we can do in the forestry. Both is decreasing possibilities, but it's also opening up new challenges. And the situation is even worse. Most of the policy tools used by governments is just forced biophysical models. So it means that you are centering here how you are manipulating your forest. Maybe you are taking into account some of the ecosystem services components. Maybe you're looking into one or two of the benefits. But the rest you're leaving outside. So it means that you're trying to direct a bigger system with a smaller part of a system. And that can't be right. It's like driving a car without headlights, steering wheel, and wheels. And I will illustrate a couple of examples on why the biophysical models is not enough. So, US Forest Service had been chasing a quixotic timber famine for a long time in the last century. And it was based on biophysical analysis, the growth, and the industrial capacities. And by that, Forest Service created a huge harvesting program on the federal forest. And a lot of the old growth disappeared. And Adams and Haynes came in, where you took into account economics and the industrial side, and it changed completely the dynamics and the timber famine. And that was used in the Resource Planning Act by US Forest Service, so in the regular planning. And they continued to do so for a number of years, improving the TAM system. But suddenly, US Forest Service decided to drop it and go back to more simple models of biophysical type. And so you can say that US Forest Service have taken a step backwards. We have a similar example here in Sweden. In the late 60s, we used simple biophysical models where we compared the future annual increment with the industrial capacity. And it was a lot of noisy debates, and it was about the timber sag. So the government put up a commission in the 70s, and they said, we must increase the harvest by around 15 million cubic meters. And that was in 1973. But shortly after, we had the energy crisis, we had an economic recession, we had industrial structural change, and the timber demand dropped substantially. And suddenly, we were speaking about what to do with a timber mountain. This is a long time ago, but we haven't learned much. We are still using biophysical models for our policy making, and it's called the SCAR analysis. Gert-Jan was speaking about EU, and it is rather remarkable that the European Union doesn't have a holistic system to validate their proposals or the policies from a holistic point of view, on all the things they are cranking out. And I will illustrate with one issue, and it's the biomass use in a net zero emission economy. And EU has used, based on biophysical model, what the member states are saying is available, and they are comparing with how much they need. On the other side, there is a company named Material Economics, and they use integrated model, looking at all materials and energy use, resource efficiency, and the economics, and potential alternatives. And they are coming up with the conclusion that the European Union is overestimating the biomass use by 40 to 100% in comparison to what will be available. And in their high value added scenario, they are seeing that they can make much bigger cost savings, land savings, and emission savings compared to what EU is suggesting. And here are the sectors you're looking into. And one interesting part is here. That is biofuels for transport. Zero. And this is a highly political issue today. And the reason is that the biomass is too valuable for that kind of low value added products. We should use it for the high-end aviation fuel, for power generation, but not at least in the forest industry for producing forest products. So that is a completely different picture to what the European Union is having. So I'm arguing that there is a stagnation or even a regression in the use of relevant tools in the forest sector policy making. And our laureates are representing the needed category of policy analysis. And that is the right direction to go. And I will just illustrate that the TAM model and Papyrus model were pioneers, and with the global trade, it was my former institute, YASA, and we have had a development of a whole family of this kind of models. But they are not used in the regular governmental policy making. And those models are mainly partial general equilibrium models. And a central part of the partial equilibrium models is the demand equation, which is based on a production theory which we have used for a long time. So this has worked quite well as long as the world trotted away on a smooth path. But how good are they at handling abrupt structural changes and systemic shifts? Again, a couple of examples. This is newsprint consumption in the US. So in the early 90s, something happened in the United States. We have the substitution of newsprint to electronic media. And it went rather rapidly. But the models couldn't catch up that because we are using based on historical trend developments. And you can see that it's a rather big gap. And today, the consumption in the US is about 1.5 million tons compared with 14, 15. If you are looking at the newsprint at the global level, in the mid-90s, the Swedish government commissioned Boston Consultant Group to do an outlook study for the forest sector in Sweden. And they came back and said, we are very concerned, among other things, about newsprint. And that is the red bars coming from the Boston Consultant Group. Of course, they had used the transition rate back from US. It went rather rapidly. The industry didn't like that at all. So the industry commissioned to Jacob Pöyry and Risi to do our analysis. And they got happy because they said it's going to be nearly 50 million. And what was worse, they invested in hefty capacity expansions. And they are dead now, they are obsolete. So it's illustrating the risk of using those trend projections, but also that you really have to take into account what's happening outside the conventional forest sector. And as I have indicated, I expect a lot of shifts and risks in the future. And if you just look at the forestry, and Gert-Jan has already been into the two first ones, and but we also have that the forest owners are not happy with the profitability. So what can we do about that in the future? When will we see the heavy breakthroughs on biomaterial substitution? And for sure, the forest cannot support all demands, so what has to give? If you look at the industry, how disruptive will the extended BRICS be and the Belt and Road Initiative? 500 Chinese companies have already invested along the Belt and Road. 85% of the Russian production of forest products is going to China or going through China. And as Gert-Jan said, it will be so for the next 20 years. And will the convention forest industrial production go to the south? If I compare 1990 with today, the wooden panels have gone from 18% to 70%. Paper 15 to 50. Pulp 8 to 30. I think this is going to continue. And the big headache is, of course, what's going to happen in the world. Here we have very rapid shifts. And it deals with the societal dimensions, the geopolitical dimensions, the digital, the economics, nature, and not at least value changes in the societies, and the value changes among the consumers. And this is connected by an incredible, complicated web of interactions. So the probability is very high that things are changing. Yeah, we also have impacts of technological changes within the conventional industry. I don't have time to discuss that. We can do it over lunch. So we have a very complex world of today, and is full of policy shifts and policy risks. And it's obvious that the model is just building on trend extrapolation, and only on parts of the system they will fail. So it's time now, we need something new and additional. My colleagues, Finnish colleagues Huumakoski and Hätemäki, has proposed the implement of foresight approaches. I'm supportive of that. There are also other concepts to follow, but this is a good one. The foresight studies is that you're trying to identify and evaluate and possible and probable futures. We don't have one future, we have many futures. And you're using different scientific disciplines, mixing it with philosophy, political fingertip feeling, common sense, in order to get to that understanding. And Hätemäki has suggested a four-step way. So you're going back, trying to identify why the heck are we here today? Why have we come up here? And by exploring and scanning and arguing and challenging, trying to identify possible futures. And from that you're selecting a strategy. So one way forward, possible way forward, is to combine the foresight studies with four-sector outlook studies. And that you are using backcasting. So it means that you are starting with those alternative futures, and you're using your outlook studies to go back and see how can you bring today's situation to those futures. So, to wrap up, the four-sector policies must be set within a larger perspective and not just based on the forest resources. The forest policies and forest industry policies have to be developed in tandem. We have a rather remarkable situation among policymakers. A lot of interest is put to the forest side, but it's nearly taboo to speak about the industry development. It seems like the policymakers think that the structure we have of the industry today will be the same year 2100, and that is not the case. So we need to have a holistic view of the sector. The good old linear models are obsolete in a world full of systemic shifts, huge risks, black swans, unknown unknowns. And for that we need the foresight studies. Historically, governments and companies have had a reactive and rather sluggish handling of risks and change. In the future, we must have a proactive handling of risks, and not at least of resilience, because resilience will be crucial for survival in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sten, for this very clear message. We can take one question if there is an urgent question. Birger.
Thank you. Joseph was advocating simple models, and you are advocating probably more complicated ones,
Yeah.
as I understand it.
Yeah.
But you also said that a combination of this is possible.
Yeah.
Did I understand you correctly there?
Yeah.
So then my question is, the industry is the first driving force here, because when you do an investment in a big pulp mill, you have done it for 10, 20, probably longer. It's a sort of putty clay technology. Before you do the investment, you have a lot of options. You have done the investment, you are stuck, more or less. And my question is, do the forest industry, they must, in the board, when they decide on $1 billion of euros, or hundreds of millions of euros, they must have done very good, better analysis than those you presented from in the beginning of the 2000 or 1990s. That's my question. What is your impression about the board in the forest industries on that respect?
Let me start in the following end. Yes, you're right. The volume of investment in the industry, especially with pulp and paper, they are big, huge. So in a way, you are building, you're stuck in a certain situation due to the heavy investments. But I think you have to go back or go further than just looking into the individual mill. Let's take an example of a pulp mill. What can that pulp mill do further down the road? And I'm not sure. Yes, the industry is of course doing better analysis in comparison when the government is doing. But I'm not sure that they are that much better. I have had the privilege to look into a number of board meetings about taking decisions about the investments in new capacities. And you are astonished how unsharp the pencils are. It's completely other factors in the end deciding what is going to be invested in. And very often people are going in with a certain view to that process. This is the way to go, and they're not willing to change it.
Thank you. Thank you.